Hi, I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have some hyped fantasy romance books to talk with you about. So I feel like there are always a lot of fantasy romance books that are out there. Well, there are a lot. There's a lot of fantasy romance books that exist in the world. And there are a lot that I feel like people talk about all the time and people are wondering whether or not it is worth the hype and if you should read these books. So today I have 5 books that I think are super hyped, that a lot of people talk about all the time, that I think are worth the hype. I think that if you have not read these yet, you should, because I like them. Now, I'm going to start this off with one of my favorite fantasy romance series of all time, and that is the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. If you have not read this series yet, you're missing out. There's one book in this entire video I want you to read, is this one. This is my special Waterstones edition that I do have. The regular editions do look like this. This is a little difficult to talk about because of reasons, and I would say that if you like the Throne of Glass series, definitely pick up the Plated Prisoner series. Now, the Throne of Glass series isn't something that I'm recommending in this video just because I think of that more as like primarily a fantasy series and a fantasy romance series in my own mind. It is my favorite book series of all time, but not my favorite. Madison, you are getting ahead of yourself. Anyway, the Plated Prisoner series is great if you love the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Just putting it out there off the bat. So this series is based on a reimagining of the King Midas myth, which if you don't know, King Midas was able to use his touch to turn things into gold. Until one day he turned like his daughter into gold and realized how much his greed was becoming a whole thing and yada yada yada. So in this you're following Oren, and she is the gold-plated prisoner. King Midas turned her into a gold human, and she is the only one of her kind, the only one of that exists, and she is kept as his prisoner in like a cage to kind of perform for him. And King Midas obviously can turn whatever he wants into gold. He has like his whole harem situation going on, and honestly, Oren is in a bit of a mentally manipulative relationship with King Midas because she has like huge Stockholm syndrome, and what ends up happening is that she ends up getting kidnapped and captured by King Midas's enemy, and that is what this entire series ends up being about. And it is absolutely phenomenal. The spice in this series doesn't start until book 3, but once it gets spicy, honey, it gets spicy. Okay? Deliciousness. But do know that in the first book there is on-page rape, not of our main character, but of someone else. So if that is something that is triggering to you, please do be aware of that. This series overall does have a lot of darker content to it. It is a dark fantasy romance, if I had to kind of coin a specific term for it, because like I said, Oren does have huge Stockholm syndrome, and the way that she was just treated and the way that she views things is a huge thing. So please do be aware of that before going into it. But if you're okay with those subject matters, this is hands down like one of my all-time favorite series. You cannot go wrong with it. It is so bingeable, and the way that the series progresses is so much like Throne of Glass, where the very first book is one thing and then the second book is something completely different, and then by the third book it's like the series isn't even the same as you started at all. And I love book series like that where they have so much development. Not only that, but also similar to the Throne of Glass series is you start off only with like Oren's perspective, and then as each book goes on you gain more and more perspectives from the other characters as the world keeps expanding, and as you learn more and more about like the magic system and all the politics and all those kind of things in this world, which is just so amazing. So that's my little rave rant about the Guild series. Then, just because this is currently the book that is on everyone's mind at the moment, we have got Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Everyone and their mum and their grandma and their dog is reading this book at this point, as I'm not even kidding you. So I read this book and I actually really loved it. I have a vlog. I have a non-spoiler vlog for the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. I have a spoiler vlog for Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So if you just don't want to read this, you can watch my spoiler vlog and I'll tell you everything that happens in it, in case you're wondering. This book is actually really good. I was so surprised. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't like completely groundbreaking, but I had such a fun time reading it, and I think it's going to be the book that gets a lot of other people back into reading fantasy romance. I mean, it's already started that for me. I'm super craving it ever since I finished it. So this is set in a world where you turn the age of 20, you end up deciding to follow one of 4 different career paths, and Violet, her entire life, has been training to be part of the scribe quadrant in order to be a scribe. That's what her career path is always meant to be. She's really prepared for it. But a year ago, her dad passed away, and her mum's side of the family and all of her siblings were part of the dragon quadrant, and she comes from a family of dragon riders. And so now that her dad has passed away, her mum has demanded that Violet as well enter into the dragon quadrant, and said basically, you either pass and you become a dragon rider or you die. And she's like, and I don't really care. Her mum is not the nicest person in the entire world, if you have not gleaned that by now. So when the book starts off, it's the very first day where Violet has to pass the very first test in order to enter the Rider Quadrant. And then after that, there are many other tests and many other hallmark obstacles and exams that she has to do in order to eventually, you know, get a dragon, potentially get a dragon, maybe get murdered by a dragon, and then kind of eventually become a dragon rider. At the same time, in the Rider Quadrant, there is this guy named ᴛɪධᴛᴏᴅᴅ, and ᴛɪධᴛ's family were previously rebels, and so his family goes directly against Violet's family. They actually hate each other as families because they murdered each other during the rebellion. And so ᴛɪධᴛ makes it his mission where he basically wants to murder her, and a lot of people also want to murder her. And actually part of being in the Rider Quadrant means that unless you're asleep in your cabin, anyone can murder you whenever they want, and it's not illegal. And so it's actually their enemies to lovers romance as well during this, and it's such a great enemies to lovers romance. This is not spicy really. It's probably like a 2 out of 5 on the spicy scale. There's 2 descriptive sex scenes that happen towards like the back third of this book, but the sexual tension and everything else that goes on along this was really, really fun. And it's kind of very much 50-50, 50% plot, 50% romance that it's kind of focusing on, because you have got like other rebellion things going on, and it's not just dragons that are in this. There's also like griffins, and then there's like also a slight magic system that goes on as well, but none of it is hard to understand. All of the magic and world building is really woven in to kind of teach you it. I will say the beginning 3 chapters are quite info dumpy, and even I was kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. But after getting through those first 3 chapters, I fell in love with this book. So if you're reading the first 3 chapters and you're not really vibing with it, just kind of get past it a little bit, because once the info dumping is done, everything else kind of makes a lot of sense. I'm not really sure why she set it up that way, because that information could have been woven in later, but you know, I didn't write the book, so I can't tell you. But it's really easy to understand, and I've seen a lot of people who pick this up be people who primarily don't really read fantasy books, so it is a great, you know, kind of beginner fantasy for a lot of people because it's squarely in that new adult space. Then we have The Tried and True Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This is just, it's a staple, I feel like, really in the fantasy romance space at this point, and again, not overtly too spicy, but it's a nice amount, probably again like a 2 out of 5 on the spice scale. But this is so unique, so fun, and I had such a blast when I read this. So in this, you're following Lara, and she is a princess who has been trained from birth to be a lethal spy. Her entire purpose in life was that when she came of age, she would be betrothed to the king of the Bridge Kingdom and spy on him and get enemy information and potentially, if need be, murder him as well. And so when this book starts off, Lara is sent to go marry him and get all this information from the king in order to give it back to her father. However, once she gets to the Bridge Kingdom, she starts to realize that maybe all the things that she was told growing up were not 100% true, and she begins to actually wonder who are the good guys and who are the bad guys in this situation. And I had so much fun with it because she was such a badass, but like was also pretending to be like really dumb and like an airhead around the king, so like he wouldn't know that like she was as cool and as like dope as she really was. But at the same time, she would like do little things like here and there and everywhere to like help things out, and it was so good, especially because like at one point she has to like sneak into his room to get something. Oh, it was so good. The sexiness of it was, oh, so good. And I just love their romance. This is a duology, so there's only 2 books in it as well, which also makes it a little bit easier to read depending on, you know, what you're into. All these other ones have been pretty long series, but I just had so much fun reading this. Also, look how gorgeous the inside pages are for this. I will say, like, oh my God, like when this book ended, like the last like 20%, my heart My heart was racing when this book was ending because I knew what was going to happen at the end of this. I knew it was happening. I was waiting for the shoe to drop. The shoe dropped and I go, no! Oh, the cliffhanger on this is so intense. Oh, it was so killer, but it was so good. And it was just a really fun romance, and it's pretty light on the magic and everything, and so if you kind of are, again, like a beginner into this genre, like it's definitely a really great one to pick up. Then we have A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is the first book in her Hades and Persephone series. Now, that being said, here, give me 1 second. Okay, that being said, that the way that Scarlett actually wrote this series is that it's written in conjunction with her Hades series. So basically, you've got 3 books out in this and 3 books out in this, and then the 4th book is the 2 of these series like combining together. So you have to read them in order. So you read one of the Hades and Persephone's, then one of the Hades, and Hades, Persephone's, Hades, 1 and 2. You get what I'm saying? Okay. So the Hades and Persephone books are written in Persephone's perspective, and the Hades series is written in Hades' perspective. That being said, these books do not follow the exact same like timeline and plot line. There are like a lot of things that differ in between this, especially because Persephone's perspective follows like a lot of like the mortal stuff that she does, whereas Hades' stuff ends up following a lot of the other inner workings to what the other gods are doing and all like the Olympus stuff that's going on. So you end up saying 2 different things, which I think a lot of people don't realize and kind of just skip out in his books because of that. That being said, this series is deliciously spicy, and fun fact, when I read this book, I was in the airplane sitting next to someone who was reading the Bible. I'm not even shitting you right now. I'm sitting there reading this, reading a whole ass sexy scene, and the person next to me is reading Jesus Christ. You know, so that's a whole thing. So this is set in New Athens, and this is kind of a urban fantasy series. I thought the best way to explain it. So the Greek gods do exist. The humans do know about the Greek gods existing, and the gods, you know, exist in regular mortal life and have different forms and different magics that they do use. They can choose to live, you know, with mortals in society, or they can live away wherever they feel like it in their own domains and stuff. And so you're following Persephone. No one knows that Persephone is Persephone and that she's a goddess. And so she lives out her life pretending to be mortal until she ends up crossing paths with Hades one day and accidentally ends up entering into a bargain with him, you know, which is the fact that she has to find a way to create life within the underworld. And so she also has a set period of time in which she must complete this, otherwise she will become like his prisoner, which is like a riff on like the regular Hades and Persephone kind of thing. And so it is their romance. I love this. It was so much fun. It was so bingeable and so easy to read, which is the one thing that I find about all of Scarlett St. Clair's books, is that her books are really, really quick to read. And so I feel like if you're ever like in a slump or don't know what to pick up, you can easily pick up one of these. And I just don't know what it is that makes her books like so like, but they really are. And the spice in them is pretty delicious, and there's like some really great like lines in this. The books just get spicier and spicier as well, and the drama just gets like more and more and more, and like especially as entrenched as like Persephone gets like within like the godly drama and like all the different gods and everything that goes on there. Scarlett also has like written spin-off novellas for some of the different gods as well. Like she's got one for like Aphrodite coming out next year. So excited. So yes. And then last but not least, I mean, I had to mention my main bitch here. How can I not mention the Acatar series by SJM? So if you have not read this series, are you living under a rock, babes? Really, I feel like when it comes to Sarah J Maas, you start in one of 2 places. You either read her Throne of Glass series or you read her Acatar series. Now, if you're looking for fantasy romance that's more romance heavy, more sexy, more like all that kind of stuff, you're gonna want to start with her Acatar series, which starts with Acatar. You know, and this very first book here is a Beauty and the Beast Fae reimagining. So you're following, well, I have not had to explain this in so long, but you're following Feyre, who is a human, and she is the sole provider for her family, and one day she is out hunting and she ends up killing this wolf, and it turns out that this wolf was actually a Fae, And so the Fae, like High Lord of the Spring Court, ends up coming to Feyre and kidnapping her and bringing her to his court to pay, you know, retribution for having killed the wolf. And so she is there as his prisoner, and they end up falling in love in like a kind of Beauty and the Beast way. And it turns out that I can't say anything else because the rest of it is a spoiler. So that is my very crude way of explaining what this series is about, which I hope you guys understand and appreciate enough. I'm so sad they changed these covers. Like, these are so iconic. Like, how could you ever do that? But the spice in this doesn't start until the second book in the series, and then each book that she has written gets progressively spicy. Yeah, technically. I don't think there's much spice difference between books 2 and 3. I feel like they're pretty on par. But then after that, you know, all of her spin-offs and all the other books that she's written are spicy. But there is a whole reading order when it comes to Sarah J Maas and the way that you should read all of her books. I do have an entire video that is a Maasverse theory video that you should 100% watch if you have read her books at all, because it delves into a bunch of different crackpot theories, you know, which is what I'm good at. So anyway, please let me know down below what some of your favourite fantasy romance books are, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel and don't forget to check me out over on TikTok and Instagram, and until next time, thanks so much everyone, bye bye!